First off, everyone needs to listen to your podcast. I think you guys are probably my most favorite industry podcast out there because you guys really teach actors how to actually be entrepreneurs, how to actually market themselves. So I also do feel like every actor should think of themselves as a business person.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Creative Risk, where we talk about arts, entrepreneurship, or whatever, and everything in between. Just a episode with me today and with the members and team of New American Ensemble. So I'm really excited about this episode. Right now, I'm currently in a production of The Brothers Karamazov, which is happening at the Stag and Lion Theater on 57th Street, which is this interesting, really cool space, actually, in the basement of a church. And the New American Ensemble is a new company that's formed that's producing this production. And I wanted to talk to these three because they're three young people. I think maybe they're 27, all of them. They're childhood friends, college friends, but they're best friends, really, really, really dear friends who have started this company together. And working in this production, I'm been really, really impressed with so many elements of it, namely I know it sounds kind of trite, but like the pay, it's a showcase production, but it pays really, really well for that. The quality of actors they've gotten to do this production. The production itself, there's a lot of really, really good stuff going on stage, and audiences seem to really, really like it. And so I wanted to talk to these three really just sort of about why they started this company, what it's been like, etc. And, the conversation veers in a couple different directions, of course. I wanted to ask some questions that didn't get asked just because of the nature where the conversation went, but I was just really impressed and really moved by this conversation and why these three started this theater company. The sort of developmental stages of it. And why it's needed right now. And it was really moving. So I'm really happy for you guys to listen to this and really excited for it. I'm just going to introduce sort of first the company. So the mission of the New American Ensemble, it's a player-focused, process-driven theater company based in New York City. They're fundamentally changing how theater in New York is made by building classical repertory theater with a permanent, patron-supported ensemble, working year-round to produce live theater of the highest caliber. This model does not currently exist in the United States, and we see it as the only avenue to restoring theater's role as a vital force for cultural transformation. This is not simply live theater, this is theater that lives. And we really kind of break that down in the episode and what that means, not just from a craft-driven, rehearsal-driven process, but in sort of an infrastructure of the company and how it's run and what the business principles are. And I just find it really fascinating. So I'm going to intro the three founders. Michael DeFilippis is the artistic director and co-founder of the New American Ensemble, an actor and director originally from Chicago. He received his degree in acting from LAMDA, the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. While in London, he spent 2 years in apprenticeship to British director and pedagogue James Kemp in the lineage of the Yat Malmgren character analysis work, developed out of Laban movement theory. DeFilippis has trained over a decade under Brian McManaman and has studied directing under John Gould Rubin, founding member of the Labyrinth Theater Company. So he's the co-founder and artistic director. He's also directing this production of The Brothers Karamazov. Scott Gordon, he's the co-founder and development director of New American Ensemble, born and raised in New Rochelle, New York. He attended LAMDA, graduating with honors in 2018. While in London, he studied improvisation under master practitioner Adam Megiddo and Buffon and Lecoq, specifically the Gaulier lineage. under movement expert John Baxter. Scott employs fundamental lessons from his theatrical training to inform his day-to-day practice in the corporate space. Syncretic discipline he developed under the mentorship of renowned business strategist Neil Sorbonne of NCA and the related companies. Fascinating people. Gianna Kiehl, she is the co-founder and director of production at New American Ensemble, born and raised between Burlington, Vermont and Munich, Germany. She graduated in 2018 from Lambda. While living in the UK, she was an associate producer at Ferrado Bridges, where she participated in research and development for the critically acclaimed Antigone on Strike, which opened at the Park Theater in 2025. Gianna also executive produced the critically acclaimed world premiere of David Perciva's tragic comedy Us, staged at the White Bear Theater in Kennington. Now based in New York, Gianna serves as client manager at Neil Sorbonne Associates, as well as operations and development director of Courageous Stages, an education organization specializing in arts integrated learning strategies and professional development for educators. So really, really smart people. And I was really, good people. And I knew they were smart, but I was just really pleasantly surprised by this conversation. I know that there's a lot of talk here of training and lineage and all of these things, but these are down to earth, really cool people. And I'm really excited for you guys to listen to this episode and to learn more about the folks at New American Ensemble. So enjoy. Well, why don't we just start by sort of actually just and I'm gonna follow up with bios, to get bios from you guys. But why don't you guys sort of talk about like what your position is at New American Ensemble?
Great question.
Yeah, everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
We are both co-founders with Michael DeFilippis, the one and only.
Yes.
I also currently hold the title of head of production, which currently means I oversee everything that has to do with productions, which right now means producing the Brothers Karamazov.
Exactly.
Productions and the people in them, which I think is an important distinction.
And the people in them. I also very much am in charge of overseeing every person that is involved in this process and the relationships we build with them.
Yeah, and I want to actually, can you elaborate on that just a touch? Well,
I would love to.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm letting Michael in right now. He's here.
Oh, great.
Fantastic.
Where he's just diving right in.
Here we are, folks. Tuning in.
Oh,
from
yeah.
The theater.
Yeah.
This is great. This is so good. Such great connection. Are you in the theater, honey?
You better believe I'm in the theater.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's nowhere here. Okay, there you go. You found a spot.
Yeah.
You got to get out of there, babe. There's no service.
Do it on the street. No,
Am I just lagging? How am I doing here, guys?
No, you're actually. I think you're gonna be okay. Let's try it.
Okay.
If
All right,
not,
let's give it a shot. I'm so sorry.
no, you're good. Well, you're. It's opening night, isn't it? So you're a busy boy.
It is opening night, man.
But John was talking about managing like relationships, and that's kind of your deal in managing people. Of many things you do. And
Yes.
I wanted you to elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe all good leadership, not leadership. Let me say good, like structure building, like organization building comes from building the people and how they relate to each other and what the lines of communication are and what the hierarchies of responsibility and decision making are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most intelligent way to do that is by understanding the individuals at all of those parts of the organization.
Right.
So this has a lot to do with people's strengths and people's passions.
Right.
So if you know people are more likely to operate both in a certain way, so that's like their strength, and also be interested in a certain thing, right? That's their passion. If you put them in a position where they can make those types of decisions and consider those things, they're going to do a more thorough job.
Right.
So the more that I can understand all of the people in the organization and where and who they are, the better I can position them to work more completely
Yeah.
for the mission.
Yeah, exactly.
Because ultimately we are very much a mission-driven organization.
Yeah.
And the big thing, and the three of us are all feel very strongly about this in all of our departments, is the way that we can have the most success with what we're doing is if every single person that's a part of this process is really there for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That there is a personal reason that they are working on this mission. It's not for someone else's mission or for someone else's objective. It's
Yeah.
really for their own. And we believe our mission has the capacity to contain a great deal of people who feel that way. So
yeah.
that's a big part of my concern, is like really getting to know how that all fits together.
And when and sorry to harp on this because I think it's really important and interesting.
Awesome.
But like, so
Yeah.
like, because right now the organization, I mean, you're producing this play, so there's obviously, you
Mhm.
know, now there's many people involved. But when you're talking about
Mhm.
sort of like I would, even though you guys have been collaborating, and I want to get into the history, into the mission, and all of that. You guys are friends. You guys know each other.
Mhm.
When you talk about sort of, you know, putting people in the right place and making sure they're leveraging their strengths while also, you know, fulfilling the mission, you're really talking about the three of you guys to an extent. Like, so is it sort of about like delegate? Like, is it like about like, Scott, you take care of this. Michael, you take care of this. So it's really about, and the reason why I think this is really important, and I just want to preface this by saying, because when we think about starting a theater company, people
Mhm.
jump to like, and you guys have really jumped, I would argue, to a very advanced place pretty quickly. But, you know, in the beginning of a collaboration, it's super, you know, it is sometimes 2 people, 3 people, whatever it is. And
Yeah.
you guys are going to be the consistent people throughout this. So I asked
Yes.
it to go. So it's really about sort of like delegating work in a way, for lack of a way of putting it, to Scott, to Michael. Is that really what you're kind of talking about? Like in a real sense, and not in a real sense, but like
In like a practical sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes yes, but it actually at a more like granular level,
Mhm.
it actually started before that, which was it was not my job to make these decisions, but it was my job to facilitate conversations
Yeah.
that we've been having since last year, which were around us as people and our relationships to each other, asking questions like, what are you afraid of? What are you scared of losing? What do you need from this? What do you need from me?
Wow.
You know, these really intimate questions that spark a great deal of personal, like emotional vulnerability,
Yeah.
which of course also is very much at the heart of the literal product that we are designing ourselves around.
Yes.
So it was about, like, my role in that was not about, it wasn't about delegating. It was about facilitating the conversation so that the three of us would have a mutual understanding of how we all personally relate to the work we're doing.
Well, that's so,
Because
yeah.
from there, it actually flows more authentically.
Yes.
Because we already
If I-
know where we all are at.
If I could jump in with this,
Yeah.
am I good connection wise?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
If I could jump in here just to touch on my experience of Gianna facilitating that and us doing that work at the foundation of us coming in as an ensemble. I've done a lot of research and looking into things like the group theater in the 1930s and 40s, who were one of my inspirations of a group that came together to investigate a lot of the things that we are interested in investigating ourselves now in America, in New York City. Ensemble repertory work. They didn't quite get to repertory work, but ensemble process-oriented work that was acting-focused, player-focused, right? Learning about, I recommend The Fervent Years, a book for
Great
anybody
book.
who's interested in the history of, that's phenomenal. And there's an amazing thing that 10 years after The Fervent Years came out, Harold Klerman wrote an afterword about why he thought that the group theater failed 10 years out. 20 years after that, he wrote another one about, with 30 years perspective, why he thought they failed. So it's fascinating. I mean, it's such a resource to learn about how these things succeed and why they don't and when they do, and get perspective there. But one of the things that I really felt was that, and it's one of the most unique aspects of Gianna, Scott, and I running the company together, is because at the foundation of us working as an organization is, best friendship. I mean, like a deep, deep, deep friendship, relationships, care between the three of us that was there before the company was there. We have a license to ask questions and investigate dynamics that if you're three strangers coming together, it takes years, if it's even possible, to be able to do that. The questions that Gianna was asking us at the foundation of this about, hey, if we're going to do this, we have to be so upfront about all our insecurities, all our fears, all our shit. And let me fucking tell you, man, the stuff that was coming up, I mean, especially for me, taking on the role of artistic director, and this being a dream of mine for many, many, many years, you know, so many insecurities, fears, as soon as this thing started to organize, just started to come up and present themselves in relational things. And because we had the wherewithal to slow down and be like, okay, let's talk about these dynamics and let's talk about the insecurities that's coming up, we were able to work through these things in a way that allowed the work to come through in its optimal form, and the organization to come through in its optimal form. And those are the things that 4 years down the line break up companies, because there are resentments and things that can't be communicated that are held on to. You know, it's the reason why at the end of the Moscow Art Theater, Stanislavski and Nemirovich Danchenko, they only could communicate through letter. They couldn't talk to each other, because there was so much emotional resentment between the two of them. And that's why it splintered and turned into what it turned into. So what John is talking about here about this facilitation, to me, it's the rarest asset that we have as an organization. And it's really powerful, and it continues to be so. And it's a mutual agreement between the three of us that requires a lot of truth and intimacy.
Well,
it's really powerful.
That's fascinating, and you just don't think about that. You know, it's like when you're collaborating on whatever is a film, a play, a project, anything. Like you don't, like you just sort of dive in a lot of times, and it's like, and you don't, and there's not communication of sort of like, you know, not even, I like this word of facilitation of like, because it's not about delegation. It's about like, well, what do you want to do with this? What's important to you as a collaborator, and getting it all that on the table, because you're so right. That is how emotional resentment builds up in any collaboration, is that there's not clear boundaries, right? And there's a lack of communication. So all of a sudden you start getting resentful about something somebody's not doing, and there's this sort of like, who's going to jump first on this thing that we have to do, and there's and all of these little dynamics that really start to build up and hurt a collaboration, and I think that's really important. Scott, I'm going to go to you. What do you do? What would you say your quote, for lack of putting it, position is, or responsibilities are to the organization?
And I'll never tell you. I think
I do the blood rituals.
I'll clam up. I'm just gonna clam up, and you'll figure this thing out from context.
Exactly.
It'll be like an interpretive.
I like it. Just do a dance.
I've got enough space, actually.
That's great. Yeah, get after it.
I had coffee, so I don't normally have coffee, so awesome. I'm coming at you like a live wire. My title, as well as co-founder with my other two esteemed colleagues and best friends, is development director. So, you know, what that basically shakes out to is I'm responsible for, in the sense we all are, but trying to hold the responsibility, to center the focus of the responsibility of ensuring that we're able to complete the next stages of what we're setting out to do.
Right.
And, you know, of course, Brothers Karamazov is what we're working on right now, but Brothers Karamazov is one step,
right, the
first step in the direction that we're heading. And I think, you know, a lot of these conversations that we're talking about, it's very interesting. You know, you mentioned Michael before you got on. Mike, the bod, shall we call him, was mentioning.
I was like, what are you talking about? But when you said the bod, we all knew what you meant.
We all knew. Yeah. The bod was talking about, you know, that we've gotten to what he's describing as an advanced level in the journey of what we're doing quite quickly, which I agree with.
Yeah.
And I think that's for a couple reasons. One, funding, but two, these conversations that we're talking about. I mean, we started having these conversations in August of last year. You know, we did a production of The Duchess of Malfi in the same theater that we were all in, and Michael directed, and it was just like, and that started out at the idea of Michael saying like, I want to direct a play, and like we didn't have any money for that, so it was just great. Let's ask our friends who are actors and let's put this thing on. And after that, having someone see that, our executive producer, our current benefactor, donor, funder, patron, Ryan of Cecil Capital, seeing that and believing in what we were trying to do and seeing the resources we were doing it with and pledging, in amount that would change the resources we were working with.
Yeah.
That put us in a very different position very quickly.
Right.
And that really sparked a necessity for these conversations that Gianna was facilitating.
Right.
And, as Michael just said, like, rightly so, those conversations were so important to be having, because very quickly we needed to take on a new sort of, a new sort of vision, right? It was a vision beyond just let's put on some theater with our friends, and all of a sudden, like, great, what do we do with the resources we have, and how are we using those, in the best way possible for what we believe needs to flourish.
Right.
And so that really developed out of those conversations like a much more robust plan, of which Brothers Karamazov, long-winded way of saying, of which Brothers Karamazov is the first step on. And so, finding a path to realize that plan and to, continue investigating that journey. Of course, you make plans and God laughs, to use something that we a thing that we cover in the show quite a lot, God. But, that is always the case. So we set out on a direction. And then, of course, things are going to come to us. Like, when we set out to do the Duchess of Malfi, we didn't think these things would come to us. And now look.
Right.
After we do the Brothers Karamazov, we have no idea what position we're going to be in. And purposely, we have left some space for that, which is after we finish this play, we're not doing a production immediately after, because we realize we're probably going to have some new things to think about. So we need to factor that all in to, the direction thing. But keeping that direction and trying to put as much resource, around something that supports that direction, much support as possible around the general, vicinity of that direction, is really the name of the game right now. And keeping our eyes open and keeping our heads up and seeing where we're naturally being guided by life, is what we're doing. I mean, I have, resource and connection in some sense, as we all do, that hopefully is able to, help support this, but we will see. Time will tell.
Yeah.
I will answer also for Scott in a big part of Scott's job is ensuring we build a sustainable business model.
Yeah.
That's really the shortest way, I think, to describe it.
Right.
Is there a business model that can actually survive in this economy and be what we want it to be?
Yeah.
And build the kind of company we want to build? It is Scott's department to actually strategize and oversee how that develops.
Well,
that was so succinct.
No, but
I think,
so sorry, Scott. Yeah.
No, looking at this as an organization, I think that's really the picture, the scope that, John is very succinctly putting there, which is, that beyond this, we are building an organization, an institution, something that we hope takes on, the scale of institution at some point. And so ensuring that is something that can actually exist in the world and isn't just, a nice thought, but it is something we have a very calculated and strategized structure around, where it can support and sustain itself and sustain the parts of it. We talk about, like Gianna says, managing people, this community that comes along with building something like this naturally. We need to make sure that we're building a container to facilitate that community and to honor that community and to, allow that community to thrive.
And so, a couple things taken away from that too is like, when money and resources come, there's like a level up you have to take, because it can't just be about, like when we teach fundraising, or when I've fundraised before, it's like, it's never just for the project, because you has to be there's a bigger vision. Like, even if it is like, you're raising money for a project, it's like, well, this is an investment in me and what I'm going to do. Or if it's an organization,
so where am I going and what do I want?
Exactly, because there's something about when money comes to the equation of like, well, now it's serious to an extent, quote, not that's not serious before, and it has to be a longer term vision, because there has to be even more of a value add and more of sort of a legacy to leave. And so what I'm taking from it, Scott, too, is that like it's ensuring that sort of logistical, institutional things are in place, whether that's finances, balancing budgets, things like that, also laying a strategic plan for the future in some ways. And I do want to talk more about that in a second, because we've been talking a lot about sort of control versus surrender, like how do you balance in one's career path or journey, how much do you grip versus how much do you need to just sort of operate off intuition. And because there's benefit in both, you don't want to just be floating, you want to have intention, but also if you grip too tightly, you can't really sort of understand, you can't really see opportunities being presented to you. So I think that's really interesting. And
tunnel vision. That's
Michael, what
Mike,
please.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Oh, no. I was just going to say that to that, I think something that allows us to be adaptive as we continue to build is the fact that our vision for this company and what we're building is so specific.
Yeah.
And we know we have such a strong sense of where we're building to, where we're going, what we need it to be and want it to be, that what we're listening for and what we're taking stock of as it changes and as we take each step is what's the best next step to lead us where we want to go.
Yeah.
And so it's that, to me, is that balance. And Gianna and Scott, I'd love to hear your, feelings on this as well. But to me, that's that balance of how we can be adaptive and intentional at the same time from my department as well.
Yes, please.
That is a very, very clear part of it.
We'll talk about that.
Well, this is a huge,
there's
an experience that we've sort of had consistently over the last year as we've been building this, or less than a year even, which is like a constant state of commitment and killing our darlings. Like, an example being something like coming up with an idea. This is the next step for how we're going to get over there. And then destroying that idea.
Right.
Like ripping it to shreds to see what actually remains. And it can be brutal to do. And it's also actually why it's helpful to have a little mini group of us, right? Because there will be something that Michael, for instance, will go, it's this, it's got to look like this. And then Scott and I poke the shit out of it and make him fight for it, basically. I mean, that's kind of a brutal way to say it, but sometimes that's what it is.
And
so we just, it sucks. He fucking hates us for it. But sometimes, and the thing is, what's kind of been beautiful to me is sometimes we both go, all right, fair enough. You were right. Absolutely. You get to keep what you said you wanted, because we've tried to poke holes in it, and you're right. That is the next best step.
Yeah. And
there's been other times when we've picked it apart, and suddenly we've gone, oh, interesting. Here, maybe it isn't that. Maybe it actually isn't. Maybe that's not exactly the step. And the reason we thought it was because we hadn't looked at it from that direction.
Right.
But so this is actually like, the way I see this goes back to, like, I love that idea of surrender versus commitment, because I think the thing that keeps you there constantly is paradox, is tension.
Right.
Which you can only create if there's a container safe enough to really constantly have tension and conflict. Our friendship, which is the container, which is an active developing friendship. It's not like a passive sort of unconsidered friendship. This container puts us in a position where we put ourselves in that paradox over and over again. We say to Michael, you have to believe in this with all of your heart. And also we're going to stomp all over your heart sometimes. Like and he has to go, no, you can't stomp there, or yes, stomp here. And we say this all the time. We have to fight for our corner constantly. Yeah. And that's the deal. Like, the deal is we have to be in a state of conviction for our own corner. And we trust that the other person is fighting in their corner as well. Wow. So if they finally raise the thing and go, stop now, this is what I'm saying, and this is how it is because of my corner, then we all go, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
We go that direction.
That's deep. Well, it's deep because
it's fucking deep.
Well, it's deep. Well, first off, Ray Dalio, not to take it, to Ray Dalio, but like, he has this book called Principles, and like, it's, he's a hedge fund manager, but he talks about that's merit, the sense of meritocracy and the sense of conflict is where organizations thrive. But what I'm taking away from what you guys are talking about is like, because I was not expecting that almost. And the way you guys are wording this, and it's just making me realize that, like, well, when you collaborate with somebody, it really is a deep thing, because you have to be personally invest and grow a relationship, so there is trust, so that conflict can exist. So conflict can exist because you need conflict.
Exactly.
Right.
You need it. You're fucked otherwise.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's passive, right? You lead to nothing, right? If nothing is ever challenged, you're not coming up with new ideas.
Right.
And
there's I was just gonna say, Vakhtangov, who is one of Stanislavski's people, he has these
That's okay.
he has these 4 questions that he asks his company to ask themselves before every production. And it was, so before every show that you do, you did with Vakhtangov in the 40s and 50s, he'd ask you to ask, why am I in the theater? Why am I in this company? Why am I in this show? Why am I in this role? Before every production, you'd have to ask yourself those 4 questions before every production. And I think that level of making yourself really come back to, wait, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this at each level, every step of the way, ensures that the why is pure and concentrated and fully present all the way through. Because this creative life, it can get so easy to lose sight of the why if you're not constantly asking yourself to be as honest as possible with that why that you can be in that moment, and holding it there and looking at it. And to do that with others is again, it's fucking brutal at times. And we talk about how brutal that can be. But again, it's this, to me, underneath it all is a collective buy-in from the 3 of us at the core of what we believe in this company. Its importance, and why the 3 of us need it personally to exist in this world, not just at a wide, kind of social level, why we believe it should exist. For me,
please. Again, this is my next question, is sort of like, what does this company represent? Why is this? Because I know it comes from a deep need from all 3 of you. Like, what does it represent, and why is it needed? Not just in the larger context of theater or life, but personally for you guys. Why is it needed?
I'll say this. I mean, the kind of conception of NAE happened for me about 7 or 8 years ago when we were at Lambda in London, and my mentor at the time told me that this theater company was coming from Russia, from St. Petersburg to London for the first time in over a decade. And I'd never seen his face look this way when he was talking. I will never forget, he came out of the studio and he was like, it was like, I couldn't comprehend the news that he had received. I was like, what is happening? And he's like, they're coming back. And I was like, what is going on? And this man to me, and this is so funny, somebody put it this way a few days ago. This man to me at the time was God. I mean, his name is James Kemp. Like, he's the single most influential person on my artistic sensibilities to this day. Like, what he gave me about my taste in art and what I look for in theater and acting. And he came out, so God came and told me God was coming to town. And so I was like,
that's great.
I was like, holy shit. Okay, so I need to see this. He said they're going to be here for 10 performances. Go see them as many times as you can. And so I did. I bought tickets to see them do Uncle Vanya and Life and Fate, which is another one of their productions, multiple times. And it's the Mali Drama Theater of St. Petersburg, led by Lev Godin. And it was one of those moments where, like, my life changed after seeing them. I saw manifested the possibilities within theater. It was ensemble storytelling. I finally understood the merits of ensemble theater because I saw it manifested. Every actor on the stage was giving one of the best performances I'd ever seen. There wasn't any sort of like, and the reason that they were the best performances I'd ever seen was no one was acting for their own, for a secondary objective. No one was there trying to like stand out.
Yeah.
It wasn't 15 lone wolves who were all hired for a show that they had just met themselves in going, if I do great in this show, I'll get a next job, right? So I need to stand out.
Right.
It was 15 people on stage telling a story, and the story was the objective.
Yeah.
They were united in that objective. It was so effortless and unpretentious and pure in that sense. And it blew my mind. And I left the theater, and my first two feelings were revelation and then despair. Because I realized, I said, oh, this doesn't exist in the West. A company structured like this does not exist in England. It does not exist in America. In that fullness, there are companies who, you know, I don't mean to denigrate, because there are some companies here that really do, you know, you work for one of them, Bedlam, that really do build on ensemble roots and do work that I really value and honor. But at a whole, this level of opportunity and availability and ensemble essence, I didn't know where it existed. So my first instinct was, I need to learn Russian and move to St. Petersburg and see if I can join this company. And I was like, genuinely, I was like, I guess I'm moving to Russia. Because I saw the thing that if it existed here, that would be all I was spending my time trying to be a part of.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw the thing. I was like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's all I want to do. It's not Hollywood. It's not fucking, you know, Tony for this revival of this thing where I meet these three people that, you know, I've just met and, you know, we're all doing it for our separate reasons. It was this. I said, this is to me the peak of theater. I felt it. I felt it so palpably. And I talked to a teacher of mine and I said, you know, I don't know what to do. I guess I have to go to Russia, learn Russian. And she said, or you could start it here. And in my head, I went, are you nuts? Like the money and the organization, like that'd be insane. But her putting that seed in for years, I mean, it never left me. And I would think about it and I'd talk about it with Scott and Gianna. I mean, they both knew how, you know, and again, like talking about it with them, like it's something that the three of us have always intuitively wanted to see exist in the world in theater. So it was like we had that alignment there. And then, you know, it was last year, after years of being an actor in the city and being a part of work where process was just not the priority in the room of creating work, and particularly actor-focused process.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, and especially it's tough in indie theater because so much of independent theater, there's no funding, so there's no time for rehearsal. So it's really like, hey, you got to know exactly what this character is going to be and show up and be able to do it and go. And I just didn't feel, and there was this sense as well that the work of the actor was being taken for granted. I'd be in rehearsals and I'd just feel people being like, okay, yeah, you know, whatever you're doing is fine. And really, I'd be watching the work and be like, is no one going to fucking, like, stop this and work on this and focus on the storytelling between us? And it was happening, you know, sorry for this long-winded answer, but that was happening in the context of independent theater. And I know for a fact it happens in the context of Broadway, off-Broadway, you know, where we're given 2.5 weeks to rehearse and then we're in tech and performance, you know, previews begin. It's just madness to me because to me, it's not how theater can exist in its optimal way. So I felt fed up with it. And that's when last year I called Scott and Gianna and I said, look, I want to direct a play. I want to do it with you guys and, you know, do it in the way that we are yearning for. So I say this to say, like, our company needs to exist. This ensemble-based, process-driven, ultimately repertory theater needs to exist because I need it to exist for me as an artist.
Yeah.
Because there's no other way that I want to make theater. And if it doesn't exist, I'm miserable.
Right.
And I need it to exist so that I can do this. And I think that personal need, and Gianna can really elaborate on why we believe it's needed at a social level as well. But that personal need for the three of us to make theater in this way is primal. I mean, like it's utterly necessary.
Yeah.
So that gives a lot of fuel for what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so funny when you said that, Michael. I'm like, yeah, we came up and we were the money in the organization.
Yeah.
Suddenly we had all three somehow last summer.
Yeah.
No, I agree with everything Michael says, and as he mentions, I have like a different angle. Like the way that I relate to this comes from a different place for me.
Yeah.
You know, when he's talking about the Mali drama the theater, and he's talking about these people who are on stage not auditioning for their next job.
Yeah.
The question to me is, why do you go, like, this is this thing about why economy is such a huge part of this.
Yeah.
Why do you go on stage if it's not about how much money you're going to make? If you have a salary, what brings you to that stage, and what do you do when you're on that stage? What's the value? Like, if you look at the job of an actor like any other job, what's your actual job description?
Interesting.
Because when you're a freelancer, your job is be so good someone recognizes you and hires you.
That's
again.
very interesting.
That's your job description.
Yeah.
So what kind of what is acting actually? What is the value of acting if there's a salary for it?
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is the standard? What's the expectation? And then that's where it becomes set by us. So this is what I see, right? What this company represents to me, and this is why I care about this so much on the the DNA level of the company, meaning the relationship between the three of us, as it expands outward to the actual bigger company and the product itself, which will be the ensemble, or which is the ensemble.
Yeah.
Which is theater matters more than money. If you've got money to pay actors, what matters is what is the experience of being told a story, and how well can you be told a story? And why do stories actually exist? Why were they invented? They were invented because human beings with our big fucking brains have a capacity to imagine, which fucks us. But what we turn that into is into invention, into creativity. We had this capacity to put outside of our heads something that we felt, to be able to look at it and then understand it better and then find a new way to relate to it and therefore evolve. Right? That's what storytelling is about. It's just like a thing that we did with our brains because we didn't know what else to do. You know, we created God and we created religion. I mean, these are all just fucking stories, right? Like all of this, it's the thing that keeps us from literally going insane. And so if there are salaries for storytellers, what we can focus on is just getting really good at telling stories and not have the stories be impacted by what money we may or may not get from telling that story.
That's fascinating. Well, both of those answers combined, and Scott, I want to hear your response too. But yeah, that's really blowing my mind, because it's like, when you talk about ensemble building, right? It's like, you know, I always it's like what I'm taking away from that is that, you know, when Michael, you talk about sort of seeing like this sort of selfless service, right? And you're so, you know, in a process, and Gianna, what you're so right about is that, it's like the job is to get the next job. Well, is that the job? Because because then what is the job without that context? What if you just always had the job? And it's very hard. It's hard to go. It's hard to go there. It's hard because we're in a survival state, and it's you know, it's hard to actually examine the thing in its, for lack of a better way of putting it, purest sense, without the secondary sort of objective that Michael's talking about. And that just blows my mind to sort of like, well, what? It's an interesting examination, because, you know, I not to get all, but I've been struggling with so many things lately personally, and it's like, as the industry collapses, right? I mean, everything's collapsing. You know, so many artistic institutions are collapsing
as we know it. As we know it.
Thank you for that clarification, because you know, and you have a idea about what it's supposed to look like, and you know, entertainment's democratized, and I think that's good. I don't think anybody should have I don't think nobody should have a monopoly on art. And you know, there's been a monopoly on art. And so kind of realizing like, oh, with the contraction of the industry as we know it, with AI, with all of these things, and am I just like, why am I putting this, like, it's been an existential crisis, because I'm like, because I don't think those are bad things. I actually don't really think those are bad things. Like, I think it's the cycle, and who am I to say like, no, it's only like what New York Theater Workshop does, that's art, or what is at the Met, that's art. It's like, I hate that. And so, but then what's happened now is I've had to go to that sort of raw question, because I don't value those things anymore. And so I actually don't, they're irrelevant. Nobody cares about them except sort of these insular bubbles. And so now you have to return to the raw question, that why that Michael was talking about. Well, why the fuck am I doing this then? If it's not for the validation or be let into like a burning, I'm banging desperately on a burning house to be let in. It's like, why am I actually fucking doing this then? And so the examination and the investigation of stripping away all that shit to kind of return to the base question of why are we doing this, and what's the actual importance of it, and then building an infrastructure to support that investigation. That's really fucking cool. That's it. Scott, what are your thoughts about that?
The world evolves, right? And that's the thing, right? Evolution, I mean, whether you believe in that or not, I get it's a crazy concept, but the world evolves, and it should, right? Like, I mean, everything evolves. Right. And that's beautiful, right? And of course, change is difficult for people. Change is always things are new all of a sudden. Like my grandfather, like watched cars be invented. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like, my great grandfather was a carriage builder, and then my grandfather was like, oh, and now they don't have horses anymore. That's crazy. You know what I mean? Like, and that's difficult. And it's like, we like the old ways, and like, of course, there are establishments that are supported by, people that believe in them, and that's great, and when things change outside of those and people don't want to accept or adapt to that, they continue to put more focus on this thing, which eventually can't support that focus because everything's so different. And so like AI, social media, all these things, like these are the natural evolutions of history, right? Of humanity. This is the point we're at now as a race, right? We've never been at this point before, at least in whatever we know. I mean, Mike, we can talk about ancient aliens, but but I think, like as things become more here, right? Like this is starting to be our relational distance, right? Like as a society,
for the listeners.
Yes. Yeah. Right. This is the 2 to 5 inches is the distance in which we relate to the world now, because the world is the phone. Right. Whether we like that or not. And that's only going to continue, and that's going to be integrated into us at some point. I mean, that's like the natural course of these things.
Yes.
So live performance only becomes a greater commodity because it soon will start to exist in a different way, because that's evolution.
Right.
So if we don't have a place, an organization, a structure, a container that is supporting what the extent of that can be, what the most optimal version, what the pinnacle of live performance can be, theater in this sense, in the context of this conversation, right? There's music, there's we will forget it exists. We won't know it's possible because it's not happening anymore.
Right.
So somewhere, something has to hold on to that and has to drive back, like you say, to the original question. We have to strip off all this shit we've put on it. I mean, as humans, as a society, we make everything extremely complex, right? Life's very simple. There's like 5 things: love others, love yourself, do good, right? Like there's like 5 core lessons in life. The 4 noble truths. I mean, you can tie this to anything. And we put all of these complex things on top of it. And of course we get distracted by that. But when you eventually go back to what the core of things is, the core of, you realize like, oh, it's this, so we have to build from that.
Right.
And the simple thing is theater, live performance, storytelling is a social technology that has been around for thousands of years. It was devised thousands of years ago. We attribute it to the Greeks, who knows, right? But even in, hunter-gatherer, shamanistic societies where people were gathered around the hearth, telling stories amongst the 15 other people they live with in their, traveling community. Like that is how, like Gianna said, we imagine outside of ourselves. That was evolution. Like that is how we grew in concept. That is how we grew as a culture. That is how we grew as a society. And we continue to. All of a sudden we, built settlements, and then the Greeks built amphitheaters. Now we had 20,000 people watching the same story.
Yeah.
And then they would go away and be provoked by this thought. They would talk to their mother different. They would talk to their friends different, right? Like this was something that evolved us as a society to where we got to today. And now the stage for that is social media. And that's right. That's globalization. Like now all of a sudden everybody's watching the same thing, but it's so passive. It's meant to garner as much attention as possible on the widest scale possible. It's not meant to shine light on a specific area of humanity and to provoke specific questions of the human condition.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like,
yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. I have to add here.
Yeah.
It also allows for conflict, but it doesn't allow for the resolution. Like you can create conflict through social media. That's one part of the relationality. But it does not allow for the end of that circle.
Right.
The paradox we talk about, creating the tension in our relationships or in the ensemble relationships, whatever. It's not just for the sake of a fight. Like that's not the point of it. The point is, can we go through this together? And that's the problem. If there's no sense of real experience, there's no sense of the full cycle of the experience.
Right. My mind is being blown. Sorry. Go, Michael.
I also have to add in here too this thing of as the world evolves, as we change, and as we're at this pivotal moment in human history where the world is going to get incredibly digital, we're about to take a leap in how we relate to things, right? What Scott is hitting at for me as well is there's a new opportunity for the importance of the simplicity of theater. There's an entire new opportunity for the importance of the simplicity of theater. We had an AI developer for Apple, a pretty popular one who like goes on tours and talks at conventions and stuff like that. He came to see Duchess of Malfi, a production last summer. And before the production, I was talking to him and he said, we're 10 years away from discovering the technology that's going to allow us to take the leap in AI.
Yeah.
And then 10 years after that, the world will be unrecognizable, is what he said to me. It scared the shit out of me. He then came and saw our play. And the first thing he said after he came out and said that the lighting in one scene was a little too dark. But
everybody's a critic, Mike. Everybody's a critic.
Exactly.
Shake it off, bro. Shake it off.
But I beg to differ. But after that, the first thing he said was, "This will not change. What you are doing will not change." And it was one of the most profound experiences I've had in the theater.
Yeah.
Of somebody who spends their life investigating AI saying, I can't change this. And that isn't to say that we're not going to start having hologram theater and all that, whatever. Like, yes, of course, that's all coming.
Yeah.
But the thing that we're doing every night, Mike, telling the Brothers Karamazov, we can keep doing that and there won't be a substitute for that in my heart.
Yeah.
And and this is the importance of preserving that. I didn't know what theater could be until I saw the Mali. So up until that point, I thought it was, going to Hollywood. I thought it was doing that thing. That's what I was training for in so many ways. Right? Like that's what because that was my context. Right. And at a certain point, it's like, Plato's cave. You can only imagine within the context that you have at a certain point. Seeing the Mali broke my mind open in terms of what was possible in the theater. I know that there are so many theater artists in this city and young theater artists, and that was me getting to see a Russian company that comes to the West every 12 years. Right. I mean, it was like, getting to see a comet, and that I was lucky. Right? So I know that if you build it, they will come, right? Like I feel very strongly that by building what we're building and focusing on what we're focusing on, we will hopefully be able to preserve something that I feel is very important to be preserved because of what it creates possibility-wise.
And also, that preservation. I mean, our motto is tradition reimagined, right? So it's about preserving what has been, and like you say, going back to the simplicity, the core of things. And I think as things move so far away from that initially, right, as we talk about digitization and stuff like that, it only forces us to go back to what was initially there, to the core of what was initially there, preserving that ancient practice, that ancient craft, which has developed and been passed down and evolved as well. And when things split in that way, right, when everything's going left and you go right, when everything's going one way and this thing must continue being a part of the conversation in some way, we are thinking about how do we present, how do we hold on to, how do we preserve, how do we reimagine this tradition now in the modern time for a modern audience. And when I think about that, I mean, another term that we use not so much in the context of NAE, but it is in the context of NAE. We also use with a friend of ours, Noah, is the Renaissance. I mean, throughout history, as these things happen, as these splits happen, it forces, it calls for, it sets into action a renaissance of these things, right? Like a reimagining of these traditions. And I very much feel on many levels, beyond just what we're doing, but on a larger collective level, artistically, energetically, a renaissance within art because, and this is maybe an incomplete thought, right now we are experiencing things as a society, as a culture, as a world that have not been experienced to the level they're being experienced, right? Like to the intensity they're being experienced on every side, in every way, right? Like repression, all these things. And so it's actually forcing us as human beings to engage with the feelings that people were engaging with the last time a great artistic movement was forced to explode. And because we've been living in a period of, moderate stability, whatever you consider stability, we haven't had to engage with these thoughts and questions in a while. We're now having to engage with these thoughts and questions again. And so it's forcing us to take a modern perspective and answer the same questions that the people before us answered. So it's not like we're copying, and it's not like we're trying to, put our spin on the thing that has been done, like the song that's been sang before. It's actually, we're trying to go back to the initial question and go, oh my God, I now feel a need to sing this song, or I now feel a need to do this thing. And it's because of what I feel. And it's because of what everyone's feeling around me. Like the energy, the collective consciousness is calling for these things to come forth and express themselves, because you need to anchor the frequency for other people to see. You need to be the example, like Michael said. He didn't know what theater was until he saw the Mali. So the Mali must exist to show us what is possible. It must anchor the frequency and the energy to show us what is possible.
Yeah. You guys have made a really good argument, because this is one of the things, listen, I think you can't take these things for granted.
No.
Because it's like theater has to, quote, defend itself. Not really.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't just go, well, it's, no, per your point, if you're just looking for, I think even you were saying, Gianna, like, just the experience of like externalizing, being entertained or whatever, like there's millions of options you have.
Yes.
And you can't just go, well, because it's theater. You have to really examine, well, what's the fucking point? And I know everybody here loves theater, and it's what we're called to do. And I have a lot of respect, to hear you guys talk about this, because listen, you can't take it for granted. You really can't. You can't just go, and that's what so many organizations are doing now. They're just going, well, it's needed because. Well, why because? Just because? Because then you start to go like, it's like the Industrial Revolution. It's like, well, handmade furniture and it becomes like an elite thing, right? Because it's like you can go to IKEA, get a fucking IKEA thing. If it's just to sit on it, then it's like you can get other things, so and then theater risks becoming an insular bubble.
It's elitist,
and sort of like
That's
elitist,
right.
an elitist thing.
And brother,
and so yeah.
No, I was just going to say, and what, again, from my perspective of the actual telling of stories and making theater, and the practicality of that, is what I often see happen is actors and taking it for granted. Right. Like, and then not I'm not saying that in like in a judgmental way, but I'm saying we get swept up in the thing and we just take for granted, like, yeah, this is just what's happening, or this is just the thing, right? Like I get hired and I do this job and this is the one I'm doing. And that,
because you have to, you can't afford not to think like that.
No,
right.
Can't. And it's a damn shame, because unfortunately, that's like the poison that infiltrates the work from my, whatever feelings about theater, but it is. It really, really is. And I can feel it.
That's it. That's why I trained to be an actor too. And I went into the industry. My first couple jobs were in commercial television, and I was doing all right. Like I was getting paid. I was getting good jobs. But my heart broke. Like I couldn't be in those spaces because I couldn't bear feeling that the priorities were not about the exploration, were not about the truth. It hurt me to be there. Like I couldn't do it anymore. And again, the same way Mikey said he had to create this for himself. Like I have to be here because I'm like, I can't do it. I can't go into the system that's been built already. So unfortunately, my only option is either to just go be sad about it or build my own.
Right.
That's the only other option. Just to try and build something that wouldn't break my heart, that would actually let other people feel like that is there. You can work for the thing that you like discovered when you were like 10 doing like theater somewhere. Like going, oh my God, this matters because I'm connected and people are responding. We're all crying. We don't know why. And like, that shit, like that fucking matters. And we all know that's why we all got into this.
Right. And it's about, there's something, listen, I do think cyborgs will be able to do theater, but not to say the most obvious thing, like seeing a story, conflict, something modeled for you on stage by people.
Yes.
That's different. It's just different. And
that's exactly it.
I have one more question, this is kind of for Michael too, because it's like, what's been interesting about this process, and it's, opened me up is, in a lot of ways, is because when we talk about all these things, it's like, reverence is something I struggle with, because it creates for me, and this is why I probably have not found the right, and this is why this is actually really important to hear, because it's like, it creates for me pressure, and like I have to live up to something, and it's difficult, and that's why, as you have known working with me, I very intentionally in any room, I do it in all rooms, I really try to bring a lot of irreverence, because but it's been interesting, doing this process, because I don't think I've been a bad collaborator. I hope I haven't. But it's like it's been interesting counter, because me and you are I think me and you are alike in a lot of ways, but me and you are very different in a lot of ways. And I where am I going with this? It's like it's opened my eyes that, like, there's a balance with all things, because it's like, I think you have a really good balance, it's like, because for me, it's like, that's, it's a way for me to get horizontal, and for me to not go like, there's no mystery here. There's no mystery that I can't unlock. It's just like, that guy wants to fuck this guy, it's like, that's just kind of where I have to take it sometimes. And I don't think it's bringing it down to my level. It's just like, but the importance, what I've really been taking away from this process is like creating a reverent space is important, because it allows people to feel safe, right? And it does allow for a level of safety. And because, you know, in this moment we're questioning a lot of things. You know, I'm questioning a lot of things, you know, about the importance of this, and I feel like some really good arguments were made today that I'm like really left with. But like, you know, what is the importance? You know, so I think about this. Why is it important? A lot of things are important. Why is this important? You know, blah 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 blah. But I really appreciate. This is where I'm going with this thought. Thank you, Mike. You know, smart Mike. I appreciate that you have always been a consistent torch holder, because you need that. You need somebody, you know, it's important for somebody to hold the torch so that I don't have to hold it. Because I don't know if I can, because you know, but I value that. I value that it's a very open, accepting space. I've never felt like I'm not welcome or my point of view is not valued or that. But it's a lot of responsibility to hold that torch of reverence, to go, hey, this is important. Because I almost can't think that sometimes. Because it blinds me. Because I feel like sometimes it blinds me. So as an organization, you guys holding the reverence torch is really important, because it allows me not to do it. Does this make any sense what I'm saying? I don't know, Michael. If this is any thoughts on. Yeah.
You looked at our logo recently?
Oh, whoa, shit! It's a torch. I swear to God, that wasn't. I literally have typed note.
Lame was like the first thing we brought up. Oh, it's a beautiful thing that you've said. Mikey, you speak.
No, Mike. I mean, first of all, it means more than I think any of us could express what you just said there.
Really?
You know, because especially as a company that's focused on process and deeply feels a reverence and a belief in what we're doing, and in me, in my position here, I'm learning so much and growing so much with every project we do within this project. I mean, it's such a growth process for me too. You know, I would say the irreverence that you bring, Mike, and you've been like a dream collaborator for me as a director.
Oh, that's nice.
And for this company. I really mean it. I could not possibly imagine doing the show without you. And the quality with which you tell the story every rehearsal and every night is like astounding to me. The irreverence you bring to me is like a holy irreverence. And I don't mean that in the sense of putting pressure, because I think what part of what it is to hold that flame of what if what we're doing is important, to me what that grounds is an intentionality that if we don't have that grounded, it can become this, well, fucking I'm doing this because it's a job and, you know, I need the money or this.
Yes.
And then the aim gets dissipated. But holding
that's totally fair. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But holding that there with that, yes, theater, it's going to be down here.
There you go.
We perform Wednesday to Sunday from 7 p.m. and Saturdays at 3 o'clock and 7:30.
Let's go.
Good marketing.
Yes. Tomorrow at 7. Come, we'd love to have you.
She's like, can I bring my service animal? I don't know why. That's where I went.
She directed it, by the way. She can't hear me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
There you go.
That's nice, yeah.
I don't know if I can say this. This might be inappropriate, but Mike, like...
We'll see.
Oh, my God!
Oh, shit! Wow! The man himself.
I just, G, go.
I, like, Mike Labbadia, again, I don't know, like, what, if this is appropriate or not appropriate to say, I don't really give a shit. The bod, yes. You know, we've talked a lot about what we wanted to create when we were casting the show, and unanimously, your irreverence was like, we were all like, we need you in that room.
Yes.
Like, that was a thing we spoke about.
That's right.
Was like, need, like, this is, again, talk about paradox and talk about conflict. Like, what a fucking shitty, boring room to have a bunch of Michael DeFilippises sitting around being like, this is so deep. And I love this, man.
We must
more than anybody.
challenge the viewpoints. And while Michael holds the torch of reverence, you must hold the torch of irreverence. They must both exist. Otherwise, there is no balance.
And I feel this so strongly that, first of all, your reverence, Mike, never undermines the work.
No.
That's something that I couldn't tolerate as an artist. To me, that's like the most, the greatest sin, whatever, is like the comment, the undermining, the being outside of the thing. That's what I just really struggle with.
No, well, this is because that's fear, right? That's fear of truth.
Right.
You are also a seeker of truth, and that's how you find it.
Yeah.
And this is the thing.
This become a compliment, an episode where complimenting me. Poisonous.
But here, this is the thing: is holding what we can do by holding that reverential space and creating that intention in the room with the artists, is that we create a space where that is there at the foundation, so we can go to the boundaries of everything. Irreverence, that trust, that safety that you talked about, feeling that space. What that allows for us is to break preciousness. Because we go so deep into the meaning of these things, we can hold preciousness and we can go beyond it, outside of it. We can get to the ugliness in it. You can get to the fucking comment on it. You know, I mean, I talk about those party scenes where I want to feel that you're covered in piss and shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That to me, that goes into reverence. You know what I mean? That is a part of my reverence. Is like, because reverence for life, which to me is at the core of this, the importance that I feel is that stories are a necessary human experience. I mean, we go to sleep and we tell ourselves stories.
Right.
You know what I mean? We can't stop. Right? Like, it's literally in our DNA.
Yeah.
And there's something about when people are united, and this goes back to what I saw on the Mali, when people are united in the importance of that story, which means I'm going to just give my all to this and live this fully here, and I'm going to be ugly, and I'm going to be fucking irreverential, and I'm going to be dirty, and I'm going to be harmonious and precious and pure and whatever, all of those things. But I'm here for the story. What that allows, what that brings, is an opportunity for somebody in the audience to go beyond themselves and their comments and their, you know, anything like that. They can just be with it, because sincerity is a very fucking rare thing these days, to hold a space for sincerity. Irony is how we relate to things. It's a safe thing. It's so safe. And it isn't to say that irony can't be in work, but this thing of no, like, just be here, be with what's happening. It makes people so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But it's that same level of honesty that we talk about, the three of us having to be within ourselves. If you can go there on stage, it's the greatest gift that you can give to an audience.
Totally.
Labbadia from the Mali talks a little bit sometimes about this thing of, you might watch a play in a moment where, you know, you feel compassion for a person that in life you would not feel compassion for, because there's something about the context of the theater where seeing them in that space, it's safe enough for you to like find your way into them. And it might not mean that you leave the theater and then go help that person on the street. It might not mean that. Let's take that off as a pressure thing, that, oh, this has to make me then go bring this person into my house. But if for 30 seconds you felt more compassion than you did, if for 30 seconds you spent 30 seconds more time with more compassion as a human being, that is enough to me to be a revolutionary.
I agree. Totally. I listen, you know, and I wanted to bring it up because it's been a point of, and one thing I have to say is that, you know, I've never felt, like I've said, this has never been a pretentious process at all. And I mean that wholeheartedly, because I can't stand it. And there's always been earnestness, Michael. And there's always been earnestness, flexibility, adaptability, openness, a room for other people. And it's never been pretentious, which I really, and that's a hard balance to strike. And so it's, you know, it's called into question a lot of things for me about, just like the importance of this, you know, the importance of holding a torch for reverence and taking that on, because the sincerity is difficult. The sincerity, especially when the world's falling apart, people are going to say, well, why the fuck do we need the theater when, you know, there's genocide and there's this and there's that, and there's why the fuck, you know, to be the person who's going to have to stand there and hold that torch when there's so many other torches that also need to be held.
Mm-hmm.
That is a brave act. That is a very brave act. It actually, it is a brave act because you're the man in the arena, you're the people in the arena doing it. And
to me, what that means is that if you're going to hold that torch, you have to hold it.
Yeah.
And that's
dude.
that's you're going to hold that torch, you have to hold it. Because if we're saying to people, hey, it's important to come see the Brothers Karamazov while the world is falling apart, we have to give them a reason to come see it.
Yeah.
And that reason is I'm gonna fucking live this thing fully. And by me doing that, it's worthy of you being here. It's worthy of your money, really. And I mean, to me, like the last element here is, for me as an artist, this is how I have the most fun doing art. Is if I'm like, why else do it if it's not with ourselves fully? Like, we're going there fully. And it means a lot to me to hear you say that it felt like an unpretentious room, because
it definitely was not a pretentious room. I hate it. You can't do it. I can't do it. But it was never that. And that's like the one thing I'm allergic to the most. Mm-hmm. And so it was never that. It was never that. So fuck yeah.
It's powerful to hear that reverence and pretension don't have to be
exactly
synonymous.
That's what I'm taking away too. It's like from a value standpoint. It's like, because as we're talking about, like, sorry to keep rambling, but it's like, as all of like these institutions have to fight for their relevance.
Yeah.
They kind of, what Scott was saying about like the tunnel vision, and you get your head so far up your ass that like you're trying to it's a turnoff, and it's disturbing to me. And so, but that was never what this was. And it's just, it's a brave act to really be like, no, this is fucking important. We're owning this. Like, yes, in the face of AI, in the face of, all of this, like the economy collapsing, all of this, we are going to hold the torch for theater. We are going to hold that torch in a non-pretentious way. And we are going to, but we're going to own it. We're going to fucking own it. We're going to fucking own this torch. And like, that's what we're holding. And it's listen, yeah, fuck yeah.
And make it accessible. I mean, that is also at the core of all this. Like, we talk about, these things can get to an elitist perspective, like an elitist position. And you look like, try and go see Othello with Jake Gyllenhaal and Denzel Washington for less than $1,000. Who the fuck can go see that? You know what I mean? And like, the importance is this needs to remain something that people can see. And that, I mean, very much for us, like, tickets must always remain affordable for everyone, like in some capacity.
I mean, okay, only rich people, like really rich people, can afford to think that just beauty for the sake of beauty is worth their money.
Right.
The people that can't afford to think like that are not going to go and realize that there's something more than just beauty at the theater.
Exactly.
We're not going to ask them to value it beyond just beauty that they can't afford. We ask the people who are happy to think like that to pay for it. And then let the people who don't know that it could be more than that come. And hopefully, God willing, give them something a little bit more than just beauty for the sake of beauty.
That's right.
Which is that bravery, right? Which is that possibility of bravery, which you just do by modeling.
My mind is blown, honestly. And no, this is really, really, really good. I mean, it's provided just a lot of deep thinking for me. I've been already thinking a lot about this whole thing and just how valuable of an experience it's been. And it's good to put words to these things. And so, and but by the time this comes out, I think it's going to be right before the last weekend. So, come see the show. It's it'll be in the show notes and all of that. And I thank you guys for taking the time to do this. Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you for this conversation, Mike, and for your being part of it, part of this whole process.
Literally, brother, could not be happening without you and your presence. Now get your ass to the theater.
Yeah, I'm going. I'm leaving. I'm leaving now. Yeah, I'm leaving now.
We all gotta go.